Welcome back to Satori Sounds, a space for slowing down, tuning in, and examining the patterns that quietly shape our lives. Today's episode takes on a subject that's both deeply ordinary and surprisingly complex. Alcohol. Not just what we drink or how much, but the web of beliefs, assumptions, and cultural stories that sit underneath it. This conversation isn't about prescribing rules or drawing hard lines. It's about developing clarity, about noticing where our assumptions and beliefs about alcohol come from, and whether they still hold up. So whether you're listening from, take a moment to settle in. This is Satori Sounds. Let's begin.
When I was looking at an episode about blue zones, I was watching all these different areas of blue zones, right? And they
blue
all
zones.
drink.
I thought you said booze zones, and I was like, what?
No, they all drink every single day, right? I say all, sorry, that is too overgeneralized. Generally, people have one or two drinks in their day. Yeah, they have one or two drinks in their day.
What are they drinking? What's the thing that they're sampling?
Well, the episode was focused mainly around Santorini and some of this kind of southern Italy areas. Okay. So that was more like red wine. So, yeah, I think it's different to doing a shot. But they were all having, on average, a glass of wine a day.
A singular glass of wine. And I suppose what I find interesting there, we've got a very specific amount. Singular. So they're not boozy, like we might see in British culture, for instance, the overconsumption of alcohol.
Oh no, British culture does not overconsume alcohol.
We underconsume. Those are rookie numbers. You've got to get those numbers up.
Russia didn't even class beer as alcoholic, did they, for years?
Oh, that's wild.
I'm pretty sure that's a real thing.
I didn't know that. And it's so interesting that we've got these examples of alcohol consumption. So Russia not considering beer as alcohol because the percentage is too low.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got health organisations like the WHO did a longitudinal study, and they said that there's no safe way to consume alcohol. And they did it over 20 years.
There's no safe way to consume alcohol.
It's interesting, you've got those two extremes. Beer's not even alcohol, drink as much as you want, and then go and drive your car. And then you've got World Health, I'm going to use the term, experts sitting there saying, no, don't drink at all.
Well, I think the problem is that we as humans are so unique that I don't think you can just say, do this, do that, right? We're not robots, but I think we could both say this, right?
Speak for yourself.
Oh, yes, you are a machine!
I'm a weapon.
But we as individuals, right? I think I could say this, you might be different, but now, I don't really drink that much. If I have 2 or 3 drinks, that is, I'm done, right? Whereas when I was at university, right, you could put 6 or 7 pints down and just carry on. So I think also it's not just how much you should drink in like that aspect. I think it does change drastically over your life as well. Hangovers are worse.
Oh, hangovers are so worse. I suppose my question then would be, is that a developmental shift, and as you maybe have matured around alcohol, or do you think that's a physiological shift? That maybe you just wig it, you're just soft. Get that Guinness away from me, I'm going to be sick.
Is it a development? I think there's an element of responsibility that goes up as well with it. So I think it's a habitual kind of where am I kind of interacting? What am I doing? So
this just in, responsibility kills hedonism. Thanks, Ollie.
We'll just stop there, yeah?
Yeah, clip that.
Clip.
But please continue. You were saying your responsibilities increase. Yeah.
Yeah, uni. The first 2 years don't count anyway. So, but they don't. They don't count towards a degree, do they? As long as you get a first in final year, you get a first. Anyway, we're not here for education.
Don't follow that advice. Joking.
It worked for me.
System works. If it works for me, it can work for you. But yeah, you were saying.
I'm not here to say anything.
Yeah. Radical genuineness. That's what we're selling right now. But yeah, go on.
We're talking about you asking
was it developmental shift
or
was it a physiological shift? And you mentioned this idea of increased responsibility.
I think that's the predominant one, but I think there is an element of physical as well, right? So you have when you're younger at university, you are typically in let's call it a generalised better shape, right? You're possibly a bit more active,
metabolism's a bit quicker.
Exactly. Metabolism a bit quicker, but also your responsibilities within reason are less. Most people at university, within reason, don't have a huge amount of responsibility compared to supporting a family, paying a mortgage, etc. So I think that lent itself to that. And I think the reason I can see that correlation is if I'm on a Saturday and I've done all my jobs and I go to the pub all afternoon, it doesn't really have that greater effect. But if I have 3 pints in the middle of the day, I'm not going to be doing any work the rest of the day, really, or useful work at work. So I think that's what's also just changed, is that my responsibility's gone up, right? So if I am on a Monday afternoon and I'm 2 o'clock and I've had 3 pints, between 2 and 5 I'm not going to be doing a lot of work. So I know I'm not going to drink anyway then. So I think for me that's what's changed. Do you think similar?
I do think that's a big factor. So realistically, the impact of what you're actually doing, when you're engaging in something more meaningful, maybe it's raising a family, maybe it's a career that you're building, maybe it's a project that you're designing, whatever it might be, you lock in a little bit more. So you realise that actually, and you become more intentional with your choices. And I can't believe I've said the word intentional in the podcast, but you're recognising that actually, that's your word, exactly.
Why have you said that? Why are you taking that away from me?
You're right. What have I done? This is the worst crime. But you're going, actually, if I drink 3 pints now and I make a mistake because my judgment is impaired or my cognition is impaired, or maybe I'm feeling physically a bit, shall we say, delicate because of those 3 pints.
Yeah.
It's going to have serious ramifications. Whereas as a student, you might be less exposed to situations, unless you're a medical student or something like that, in which you might make a mistake.
Yes.
I think that is a really important factor to name and highlight. I think the other thing as well is that your attitude around alcohol also changes. And I don't know about you, but when I got to about 25, I became more health conscious. So I started to think, well, actually, if I drink that pint, and I think longer term, is it going to help me achieve the goal that I want to actually achieve?
I wouldn't disagree. I'm laughing because I said I wouldn't disagree, but it happened a lot later for me. I would say probably only in the late 20s, not mid-20s. But it definitely was a health choice, 100%. I realised that actually, not that I was drinking comparatively lots, right? And I think everyone has different levels of their exposure, but it wasn't serving a purpose for where I wanted to get to, right?
Yeah.
So actually, I wanted to be more active. I wanted to maybe think a bit clearer. I often find next day now, if I've had a couple of pints, that brain fog, and I noticed that definitely as towards my late 20s that impacted. I also think my relationship with drink changed. I don't think I was ever like a big serious drinker and just getting smashed. Plenty of times I've been smashed, but I think now
you've never been drunk in your life. I've never seen that.
it's just not captured.
Yeah,
so, but
we won't open the group chat.
yeah, that's the group chat's sealed. What I was going to say about that though was that the whole point of what I was just explaining was my relationship with drink has changed to the point where actually I now oddly enjoy drinking more. Because I'm drinking less, when I have a drink, like we all know I'm a sucker for a glass of red wine, right? I'll actually have less, but it will be maybe of higher quality. So that's been an interesting dynamic change for me as well, is I'm more selective of what I drink because I'm drinking less and therefore I want better quality.
So it almost sounds like, because it's more of a treat, you want to make sure that you really enjoy it. So you might go for, I don't know what's a good red wine because I'm not very educated on my wines, but you're not going to buy Sainsbury's Own, for instance. You might treat yourself a little bit more from it. Yeah.
Okay. And that's correlative as well, because treating oneself to some people might be a £10 bottle of wine, whereas other people it's £55, £60 bottle of wine. But I think, that...
For me, it's 80 Mars bars, but sure.
80 Mars bars!
7
Whose
chicken mayos in a
glycemic
row.
index is just...
Absolutely. A little interesting tidbit I found when my relationship changed with alcohol and stopping drinking was that also my social relationships changed. That I stopped hanging out with a lot of people that maybe, I'm not going to say they were dependent on alcohol, but people that would go, well, we need to go to the park, it's a nice day. Oh, shall we get a 6-pack of beers? I found myself not hanging out with those people so much because I didn't want to be drunk, and I wonder, how did that happen for you, or did it happen for you in at all? Really?
Very similar, very similar. And I think it wasn't just my interaction. It was there were some people who I almost felt I needed to have a drink around, because without taking the edge off, we didn't really have a lot to kind of in common or converse with. And I definitely have stripped a few of those people back, where actually if I look at my inner circle, I don't need to have a drink to be with any of them. We may have a drink, but there is never an element where I'm like, let's meet up to have a drink. It's more, I'm going to see them and we might have a glass of wine with dinner, or we might have a pint because it's a really sunny day. So I definitely agree with that the relationship changes. And some people don't agree with it though, right? Some people are like, oh, go on, just have one. Go on, just have one.
I always find that interesting, because I think, why is me not having a drink so important and pertinent to you having a good time? What's that driving?
From my perspective, I think that is almost... I think there's a couple of things in there. I think one of them is actually, by not having a drink, you are perceived by some of those individuals as not being part of what's going on necessarily.
Which is almost, they get FOMO on my behalf.
Right? I think also there is another element of the social norm that comes with it, of we're having a drink, right? You know, we're having a drink, you need to be having a drink. It's a bit like... Well, smoking's actually different, interestingly, because I don't think it has necessarily the same social norm, right? Neither of us smoke.
I think it's changed over the last 15 years. Do you remember? I mean, we're not old enough to be working in that sort of office environment where people could smoke, but taking the smoker's break. How many deals were made over a smoker's break? And I suppose it's a similar element to the idea of having a liquid lunch with colleagues, and you'd be working with older people. They'd come back absolutely just... Yeah, for lack of a better word, car park, shall we say?
Dishwash it.
Yeah, dishwash it. Gazeboed. And then they're kind of making all these business decisions as a result of it. But there would be that social component. So I wonder if there is a similarity. But I suppose the difference that we've noticed in Britain specifically is there have been some pretty heavy smoking laws. You can't smoke on site here. You can't smoke in a pub.
Yeah.
Whereas you can... I mean, you can't drink at work. But some people might. It shouldn't. Unless you're a sommelier or something. But
yeah, beer for Fridays. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, the relationship, I think, with, I guess, smoking and people having drinks is that sense of belonging to people, right? Is that, like, a lot of people who don't smoke normally would maybe have a cigarette when they're out with their mates, because it's kind of like, well, we're all going to have a cigarette and I don't want to be left behind. And so I think that dynamic can be similar with alcohol, because you could go out and people are like, you're not really part of the group if you don't drink. And I can
the peer
definitely
pressure
hold my hand
element
up.
almost a bit. Yeah,
I can hold my hand up to think of situations when I was younger where I succumbed to that. And actually I realised that I didn't need to drink necessarily to have a good time, right? If I was doing lifts, for instance, I don't need to have a drink. I can still go out and have a good time without a drink. But I think a lot of people, if we look at more towards the evening culture, you need to have a drink to have a good time. There is that social norm.
I'd say even up to 30 that you're still seeing that. And there is definitely a conflation with drinking is a good time. That they're almost merged together. That is the good time. Everything else is irrelevant. And what I always find is, if you have to go somewhere, and because that's what alcohol does, it changes your perception. It loses your inhibitions, or your inhibitions rather. And I've always said this, if you have to go somewhere and change your perception of reality to enjoy it, perhaps you don't enjoy that version of reality, so maybe you should go and do something else.
That is a real juxtaposition for people, because I reckon some people might listen to that and go, but I think there's a real aspect of it, right? Why is it easier to make some of these interactions once you've had a beer? There is that subliminal message that sits under it. But I think a lot of people don't necessarily look at it that way, because don't get me wrong, I do enjoy having a drink, but I think it's not a... I don't need a drink to have a good time.
It's not a means to an end. That's the difference. It's not the objective. And I suppose it is quite a... What I said there was quite a... I wouldn't say controversial, but it is quite an in-your-face way of seeing it.
I was about to say, I don't think many people... In fact, I can think of many times where I wouldn't have even looked at it that way.
Yeah.
I think it's different now because we both have done a lot of work and we're a lot aware of these things.
It's with the hindsight. And I say hindsight is 2020. But when I think about a lot of the people I knew back then, and they go, oh, I'm not having fun. And you go, well, why aren't you having fun? Well, I haven't had a beer. Okay. What would a beer add to this situation right now? What is it doing? And we will do like maybe a nice little cocktail or something like that. But I suppose what we're talking about is to the point where you're getting absolutely, as we said earlier, car parked. Yeah, battered.
Dishwasher.
Adding to dishwasher. Gazebo.
Clothesline.
I haven't heard that one.
Were you going to say something? Or did you have something else to say on that?
I was going to come back to this idea of smoking, and I was just thinking, like, what is the difference between smoking and having a drink? And I wonder, in our cultural context, smoking's seen a lot of health warnings, a lot more health warnings than alcohol, I think. Sure, we had some public awareness adverts, but don't drink and drive.
Yeah.
But if you pick up a pack of cigarettes, the first thing you're going to see, not that I smoke, but when you see them, horrible teeth, maybe lung cancer, an image of lung cancer, maybe...
Graphically, isn't it?
Brutal. Whereas when you see a bottle of alcohol, it's got this pretty label. You think that's wonderful. All the bottles look, specific. That's a Heineken bottle. Oh, that's a Malbec bottle from, I don't know, an Australian
Argentina
brand.
Argentina. Yeah. Argentine Malbec.
An Argentine Malbec, exactly. And you can see that based on the bottle. And we don't display those in a plain label at all, or a black and white package, but we do for cigarettes.
That's true. That is true, and that's because societally there's been enough leverage on cigarettes that they are a bad thing, and that you shouldn't be doing that. And so I guess the question therefore is, alcohol, I don't think it can be as black and white as alcohol good or bad. I mean, you talked about the report earlier that says...
Well, there's two different perspectives. Russia doesn't even consider beer a drink. And then the WHO is like, don't drink at all, it will kill you.
Right? And so, yeah, that's hard, because I think culturally that's... I'm thinking from a UK perspective, right? If you told everyone in the UK right now, you're never going to have a drink again, I mean, there would be...
Right.
No one in any element of government would be safe, right? There would be a revolt.
There would. Well, I suppose the other thing I find quite interesting is this isn't we're talking about it now, but historically there used to be a movement for teetotalism in the UK. I think it was in the early Industrial Revolution. Yes, you never would have survived.
It's a fundamental pillar of our society, having a drink. The Great British Pub.
There is a stronger culture around it. And also, if you think about history, so take beer, for example, there's a really famous instance with a chap called, I can't remember the physician's name, but it might be Jon Snow, could be wrong. That's definitely a Game of Thrones character.
I was going to say, I agree with you because I have no idea, but that's Jon Snow.
We'll look it up and put it in the cliff notes, but he linked the consumption of sort of Thames water in London and the pump water to cholera. And so what he was saying was, at the moment, this water isn't safe to drink. Don't drink that. But because beer had gone through sort of the fermenting process, you're boiling the water out, you're cleaning it out properly, people were safer to drink beer in the 1800s at that time due to the cholera outbreaks, comparable to water. And those messages stay to some degree historically, because then you go, well, Dad's only drinking beer, Mum's only drinking beer, I'll have a beer. And then that person passed on. It's almost like a generational learning, social learning theory. You go, well, of course I'm going to have a beer. Why wouldn't I have a beer? That's without all the glamorisation and the advertisements.
Yeah, you're so right on that, because now that you said that, I can think of somebody I used to work with who would say, I'll only have a drink if it's brown. So he used to claim he only
have
beer
a drink if
or
it's
tea.
Brown.
Yeah, beer or tea.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, probably, but it was beer or tea. That was it.
Oof.
Yeah,
must have been hard to get his day done just on beer and tea. Absolutely battered.
He's thriving.
He's
microdosing.
thriving,
You just microdosing the whole way through.
It actually transpires he's the most efficient man in the country. He's just out there killing it.
But alcohol for other people, right? I think we talked about this element of this set of health, right? But for some people, I think people do just have a beer to take the edge off the day, right?
Yeah.
It could be seen as a coping mechanism, and I think that's really dangerous, because you can create a dependency from that.
Because if you are using... Cause here's an interesting idea, and how I was taught about alcohol clinically with my supervisor, is it's an emotional suppressant.
An emotional suppressant. Okay.
Yeah, so basically alcohol is a depressant substance. It pushes down levels of arousal. So we all exist on this sort of like graph almost, where we might go up and down, and that's maybe represents our emotions, checks and balances. What alcohol does is it brings the threshold of how high you go up down a little bit. It's why people react slower and they slur a lot more, because you're thinking and your brain is being actually slowed down by the alcohol. I've explained that really reductionistly. There's a lot more complex interplay in between them. But effectively what it does is when you feel anxious, that anxiety doesn't peak as high because your threshold for arousal has been lowered effectively. Which is why we say it's a bit of an emotional suppressant. And that's why it takes the edge off.
Yeah, and the thing is, I can happily say this on here, right? I think most people can probably point to the fact that at some point you've had a beer to take an edge off a day, right? If you had a really long, stressful day, or not a beer, a drink of an alcoholic drink, right? So at what
Beer's
point...
not a drink. I asked this.
They don't even class it as an alcoholic beverage. I think generally, I had a quick look here. This is Google AI, so fact check it. But apparently, it's only since 2011 Russia officially classifies beer as an alcoholic beverage.
So only for 15 years. So 15 years ago, when we were 15, we could have gone to Russia, sunk a couple. Well, obviously we wouldn't have been able to drive. Sunk a couple of beers. They were like, "Those boys are basically drinking apple juice. It's fine. It's just lemonade."
Yeah, exactly. But that, I guess, the bit where I was going with that beforehand was, when does having a beer on the assumption that it's healthy, having a drink to take the edge of a day, at what point does it become the problem? Because we've also seen, unfortunately, the other extreme of it, when people do create this whole dependency on alcohol, and it's no longer just taking the edge off the day.
Well, that is a really interesting concept, and you're talking about, I suppose, assessing for potentially alcoholism to some degree and emotional coping strategies.
Yeah, but you see, I'm not sure at what definition, and I think probably people define it differently. But what is alcoholism, right? If I have a drink every single Christmas, and I only drink once a year on Christmas, does that make me an alcoholic? Or...
It depends what you do on Christmas. So, if you drink...
battered. I was about to say,
if you drink 3 bottles of whiskey, 6 bottles of white wine, maybe punch the dog, you might have a problem. But it is a question of, do you view it as a problem? That's an important part of it. Is it getting in the way of the things that you want to be doing? Does it affect the people that you love and care about? And actually, then there is that clinical aspect of, well, actually, what is it doing to you physically? Yeah. Do you have withdrawal? Do you have moments where you'll feel like, do you suffer with low mood after alcohol, which is a very common symptom? People get hungover and they go, I feel really down right now. Are you suffering with those things after it? And those are sort of the health questions you have to begin, health and social questions you have to begin to ask yourself. Actually, what is the impact of this? Is it stopping me going to work? Can I not get up in the morning without taking the edge off, if you like? Those kind of questions. What's it doing and how's it impacting me?
I think that's a really good way of doing it, because I think it'd be really... I know clinically, and there's, for instance, on units on the back of bottles, it says the average intake for a male should be... I find that
so confusing, because the other element of that is it depends on you, your weight, your size. I'm 82 kgs, so I weigh a lot more than potentially some ladies, but there are ladies that do weigh more than me. They weigh 82 kgs, and then maybe they're taller than me, which means their intake will be different. How their body metabolizes it will be different. And guidance is really confusing. I don't know how you find it.
That's exactly my agreement. I think I was going to say the same. Yeah, no, that was exactly the point. No. You summated it much better. You articulated exactly what I was going to say. Is it's confusing. How do you categorize it? I think that's where my question originally came from. Is at what point does it become a problem for your exact reason? It's so confusing for people, and I think I really liked what you said, where you said, actually, firstly, is it affecting you? But is it also and what you want to achieve? But also the big one is affecting other people, because that, for anything we do, right? If I'm really angry and that's affecting people, I need to be aware of that. The sense of feeling drunk and doing that and having a drink, I think I put similar, right? Is that I need to be aware of that, and that awareness piece, I think, is key. And I think as you get older, we've talked about drinking less a bit, right? You do become aware of it a bit more, because you get hangovers that are worse and they affect you more. So there's a natural chemical reaction. Unless you're our good friend at Holt, never, ever. This man doesn't get a hangover.
It's impressive. I've never known him struggle.
Never.
Concerning. How does he do it? What's his secret?
Man's a machine. I think, in fact, he needs a scientific case study on how not to get hangovers.
His body sounds like he's just adapted to it. It's just like, I'm a machine. I'm the processing plant. Um, I also think there was a little bit we started to talk about the effects after you've been drinking.
Yeah.
And have you heard? Are you down with the kids? Have you heard about hangxiety?
Hangxiety.
Yeah, you ever heard about that?
So anxiety from a hangover.
From a
Is that
hangover.
what?
And it's not so much that you are feeling anxious because you've got a hangover, but you're dreading the night that just passed because you didn't know what you were going to do, and because your memory's a bit patchy. Bearing in mind, your brain will start to fill in the gaps of how bad things were, and you go, "Oh, sugar, did that really happen? Did that happen like that? Did I embarrass myself?" You know, you don't.
I can hold my hand up to this. I had that with vodka. I don't
Well, you
drink
get the
vodka.
anxiety.
Yeah. I had it once, and then it happened again, and I was like, never drinking vodka again. I just had pure blackout. I managed to order a cab, take cash out of a bank, and get in a club, and spent a couple of hours partying. No idea what happened.
Wow. Sure, that was just vodka and nothing. Someone didn't spike you.
Knowing what I drank quantity-wise of vodka, yes, it was probably the vodka. But
Wow.
I have heard of that actually, and that anxiousness in a way. But for me, that was enough for me to be like, never doing it again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very similar. I find that loss of control quite frightening.
Yeah.
The idea that you can't remember the night before. Perhaps you don't know where you were, who you were with. And there's a famous movie. Oh, what's it called? The Hangover, and it makes it out to be this like grandiose event, but in reality, that would be horrifying.
Awful.
It's just terrible. You wake up with a face tattoo. You've got a baby for some reason. Perhaps you smell afterwards. Because I've never known anyone go on a night out, go drinking, and not smell afterwards. It's crazy. Never. Terrifying.
That is terrifying, but but that's not enough to make some people ease off though from drinking, right? Because that's what's interesting is that they can go through that, but actually there's still that underlying. And I think that, to me, talk about alcoholism and things, I think the moment you realise you've got a dependency on it, to me, that's what I've been trying to figure out, is when does it become a problem? And I think this is my perspective. I'm not health guidance, right? It's not, but from my perspective, I do think it's okay to have a drink or two, right? And I think you can enjoy it. I think it's better when it's an enjoyment. But I think the moment that it creates problems like that is where it is an issue, right? If you're not aware of what's happened, or you're feeling anxious from drinking, or you've created a dependency on, I need to have a drink to do X, or I need a drink to take the edge off the day, that I think is when people need to be really aware that it is creating a dependency, and that's an issue.
Yeah, I really agree with that. That really resonates with me, and I think just that little bit that you mentioned right at the end, I need to have a drink to take the edge off. I suppose what I might add to that is you're talking about meta beliefs about behaviour almost. So when you're drinking, for instance, you might be like, I'm just relaxing. That would be a belief we have about the action that we've taken. So we might call that a meta belief about something. And I suppose my question, or not question, but understanding of that, or perspective on that, might be something like, you got to challenge yourself sometimes. Are you having a drink to quote unquote relax, or are you having a drink to emotionally regulate, to cope with a stressful situation, and you haven't got any other methods to do that? And that would be my first question, which is hard to do because the problem with some of our behaviour and our thinking is it's automatic. We don't get into the space of questioning it or challenging it, particularly meta beliefs, because they're so ingrained. That you have beliefs about what you're actually doing, and those beliefs reinforce or guide what you're doing in that moment and can be inadvertently harmful.
It's so true, right? Because I was kind of smirking to myself as you said that, because I can think of a real example that I have. I don't think I've ever had a roast without a glass of wine.
Ooh, okay. You know what? Maybe that's something to try. Roast with a Coke.
No, I don't want to be held happy.
Oh, damn. There goes my restaurant trade. Roast with a Coke. It's over. You've ruined it.
No, but it's true. That's interesting. And you see, I've never. It's just a glass of wine with a roast. Like, if I have roast beef, a glass of red wine, it's a really nice pairing.
So you're adding to the flavour. So I'm having this drink because it adds to the flavour. It's what I believe I'm doing about this. And that's a very different viewpoint to I'm doing this because I can't cope right now. Or I'm doing this because I need to relax. I'm doing this because the kids are driving me mad. Think about some of these things. What's going on?
Yeah, it's. I can't say the other word because you've already said it, but I'll say it's just building that awareness.